Good afternoon to all of you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
In the morning, we were discussing on how to get the cost of a batch. Okay, it's a continuation. So we began from job costing to batch costing. Now, what else now we discussed on what we call process costing. Process costing. Now, in the process costing, it's just like batch costing, okay, or rather, batch costing, we can have a case of what we call process costing, in the sense that when it comes to the production of most of the units, okay, they're not going to be done in one process, okay. There will be, for example, the production takes place in two departments. One department maybe for like an example you're doing, we had the department for welding, we had a department for assembly, okay? So in most cases, okay, when it comes to the production of goods, okay, quite rarely are you going to have a case where the production takes place in only one process, okay? They're going to have, for example, the welding process. Once the commodity has been finished out of the department for welding, now it goes to the next department, okay? It goes therefore to the next place of, for example, assembly, okay? So that's going to be the reality in case of a manufacturing setup, okay, a company involved in manufacturing, that the process is going to be done in stages, okay, the manufacturing is to be done in stages, process one, the next process, until by the end of those many processes, okay, we have the finished commodity, we have the finished output, okay, so the production will be taking place in bit and pieces, okay. Therefore, the main question we want to answer, the main answer, we are trying to attempt to answer the question when it comes, therefore, to the determination of the cost, okay, from process one, process two, process three, okay, process three to the nth process, okay. How, therefore, do we quantify the cost for each of the process, okay? If you determine what cost do we incur at a process one, what cost do we incur in process two, okay, what cost do we incur in process three, okay? That's what we want to answer this question, okay? There's no much distinction with the case of batch costing. The only difference here with process costing is that the output of one process, for example, the output of process one will become the input of process two, okay? So the output of process one will come therefore the input of process two, okay? That's going to be the case with the process costing, okay? But the process, the costing will be the same, okay? You want to determine them, if, for example, you want to get the cost in process one, you determine how much material is process one going to be consuming. Okay, what's the raw material? Okay, what's the labor cost to be incurred in process one? What will be the overhead that will be absorbed in process one? Okay, so the output in process one, okay, if maybe the cost for material, for labor, for overhead in process one was 10,000, then when it goes to process two, you bring forward the 10,000, okay, because in process two, what will happen is that it picks from where it was left in process one, okay. So if the cost so far incurred in process one was 10,000, then the balance brought forward, okay, what is in process two, we're going to be producing, you're going to be picking from where it was left in process one. Therefore, we start from 10,000 in short, okay. So when it comes to costing, you're going to start from 10,000. If there will be material to be added in process two, then there will be 10,000 plus material added in process two, plus labor cost, okay? So plus any other cost that will be added in process two, okay? The output, if by the end of process two, the total cost we incurred so far is 30,000, okay? And the production need to be taken to the next process, process number three, then in the input, okay, in process number three, the input will be 30,000. So first will be the balance, okay? What is the transfer from process two, okay, of 30,000, okay? Then we add the material, if any, labor cost, if any, okay? But then we are going to have, if the process end in process three, then at the end of process three, the output of process three becomes therefore the finished commodity, okay? So it's the same process we've been doing, okay? Job costing, batch costing. However, now this is done in processes, okay? We don't just start and finish, okay? We start, we do one process, the next process, the next process, okay? That's what we want to discuss in this particular topic, okay? But it's the same concept that we have been discussing so far. There's nothing new as per se, okay? So in the process costing, this is a method of applying cost system to goods or services that are produced in a series of processes, okay? So you want to get the cost of the commodity, the cost of goods, okay? Where these goods are being produced in a series of steps, okay? Step one, step two, step three, okay? That's what we determine the cost of goods in each of the process, okay? But the process remain the same, okay? So that now the production is taking place in stages, in steps. Okay. So every unit is assumed to have involved the same amount of work, and therefore the cost for a period are charged the process or the operation. So in case, for example, you want to determine if by the end of process one, okay, the output, okay, even if it is an incomplete unit, okay, because it's an incomplete, need to be taken to process two. If you want to determine what's the cost per kg of the incomplete material I have, okay, by the end of process one. Therefore, we do the same thing like we did the case of batch costing. We determine what's the cost of far we incurred in process one, okay, material, labor, production. So all the costs we incurred so far in process one, and then you can divide by the number of units that are the output of process one. Okay, if for example you want to determine what's the cost so far we have incurred on per unit basis, the same way we did the case of batch costing. Costs incurred in the entire process, we divide therefore by the number of units that are the output of process one. Okay. So every unit is assumed to have the same work. Okay. Therefore, in case you want to get the cost per unit, okay, in the same way we did the case of batch costing. Okay. It will be therefore we have to therefore consider. Okay. Okay, for example, consider what's the cost of the process. Okay, we determine therefore what's the process cost. Okay, then what's the output. Okay, the number of units of output. Okay, if they're kg, use kg. Okay, in case for example you want to get the cost per unit by the end of the process. Okay, this becomes for example process one. Okay, then the same thing applies in process two. Quantify all the costs incurred so far, plus the value of the goods that you are brought forward. Okay, divide by the number of units to get the cost per unit. Okay, so as per se, if I was to use a graphic here to help us understand the concept, give me a minute, I get my writing area. Yes. So, if, for example, okay, let me call this as process one, process account. Okay, so we have here material that you bought, labor that was incurred, any production overhead that was incurred in the process. Okay, as you said, don't forget this. Therefore, now whatever you by the end of the process, we transfer the material to the next process. Okay, therefore, I call this transfer. Okay, to process two. Transfer to process two. Okay, then you have an account for process two. Same step. Process two. Okay, the material from. Okay, this is transfer from. Okay, input. Can call the input. Transfer from process one. From process one. Okay, the one you just obtained here. Okay, then in case process two, you're going to add more material, then material added. Okay, cost of material, cost of what else can we add? Cost of labor incurred so far. Okay. Therefore, if the production doesn't stop there, okay, it goes process two. Therefore, now we transfer the material next to the next process. Transfer to process two. No, process P3, process three. Okay, this time loud. Okay. Okay, then the same thing happened. The next process, you prepare the account for the next process. A process account for step three. Okay, process account for process three. Okay, a receipt from process one. This is receipt from process two. Sorry, from process two. Okay, X amount, which is the same as here. Okay, then if any material to be added, material. If there be labor to be incurred, labor cost. Okay, if step three is the final step, then they're going to have here finished goods. Okay, because now we have finished production process. Then this goes to finished good, therefore. Okay, but the still good, as you can see, the costs here are the same. Okay, material, the one that we did the same thing. Okay, when you're doing process cost, job costing and batch costing, material. We quantify the material you incurred so far. Any labor costs that you incurred so far, the employee have used in that particular process. Okay, any overhead you've incurred so far. Okay, so when it comes to determination all the costs of the process in the same thing we'll be discussing. Okay, the only distinction is now we don't have finished good here. Okay, that's the process. From process one we go process two. From process two we go process three. Okay, And maybe if the step 3 is the final commodity, the final step, we transfer this material to the finished good. Okay, that now the process has come to an end. Okay, there's no further production, there's no further processes that need to be done on that particular commodity. Okay, but the concept remain the same. Okay, the costing concept remain the same. The only difference is now we're transferring from one process to the next process. Okay, clear? Okay, that's good. If you want to determine the unit cost, okay, I think I've mentioned, okay, you want to get what the cost of the units that the output of process 1. What do? You determine what's the cost of being incurred in process 1, okay, material, labor, production overhead, you get the total cost, okay. You divide therefore by the number of units that have been produced under process 1, okay. What is the output of process 1 that goes to process 2, okay. So if the output is 10 kg, then therefore the cost per kg will be equal to the total cost incurred. We divide therefore by 10 kgs. Okay, so unit costs are calculated by dividing the total process cost, okay, by the number of units produced in that particular process. Okay, not the entire process. Okay, don't confuse. It is not the entire process, but for that particular process. Okay. If, for example, let me just go back to our graphic there, that the T accounts that we have just drawn there. If, for example, in process 1, okay, the output here, okay, the cost, let me give you the cost here. The cost here is $10,000. And the output, the amount that is being transferred from process 1 to from process 1, process 2, let's say 100 kgs. Okay, therefore the cost the cost therefore per kg, okay, cost of unit per unit in process 1 will be equal to total cost incurred 10,000. Okay, we divide by the output. In this case, we got 100 kg from process 1. Therefore, the cost per kg that is being transferred from process 1, process 2, therefore, it's $100. Okay, if here, okay, in process number 2, okay, we had material transfer was from 100 kg. So from process 1, we have 100 kg. If we add, let's say, 50 more kg, therefore, by the end of the process, okay, we have, let's say, 150 kgs. Okay, therefore, in case we want to get cost per unit in process 2, okay, cost per unit in process 2 will be equal to the total cost incurred so far in process 2. Assume that this is, let's say, 25,000. Okay, therefore, the cost per unit therefore will be equal to process 2 will be 25,000 cost for the process. We divide by the output of the process. In this example, is equal to 150. Okay, and the same thing applies in step number 3. Okay. So when it comes to the cost per unit is the entire cost incurred for the entire process. Process 1, we divide by the output. Okay. Process 2, okay, we the number of units produced. Okay, 150. We divide by, okay, the cost incurred for the entire process. Okay, and the same thing applies to step number 3. It will be total cost incurred so far. Okay, total cost incurred so far here. Okay, divide therefore by the output. Okay, how many kgs do we end up having by the end of process 3? Okay. That's on process costing. Okay, that's on process costing. And as I mentioned, when it comes to get the cost, in the same cost we'll be discussing. Okay, the same way you have the cost card, the one you've been preparing for eternity. Okay, the same thing you'll be doing here. Okay, material, labor, production overhead. Okay, so all those costs incurred in the process need therefore to come in here. Okay. Okay, when it comes to the calculation of the cost per unit, okay, I think I've done that already. Calculate the total of all costs incurred in the process during the period. Okay, I think you've done that. Okay, determine therefore what was the cost incurred so far for the entire process. Okay, material incurred so far. In case it's overhead. Okay, that need to be absorb them into the process. Okay. And be careful, okay? If you're using marginal costing, okay, we're only going to be including only the variable overheads, okay? If it's absorption, then whether variable or fixed, we need to include them when it comes to getting the product cost, okay? Then once you have the costs, okay, for the process, okay, material, labor, overheads, okay, then you divide total costs, okay, by the number of units produced by the end of the process, okay, by the end of the process to get the cost per unit, okay, which I think we have done this. I think I've mentioned this already, okay. They have the cost per unit within the process is the total process cost. The total process cost we divide by the number of units. Okay, not the entire units for the process, but the number of units for that particular process only. Okay, because the units can be different. Okay, the output of process 1 might be different from the output of process 2. Okay, the output of process 3 might be different from the output of process 4. Okay, so you have to be quite careful. Okay, what do I want to get? What do I want to determine? Okay, the cost per unit of output 1 or process 1 or process 2 or process 3. Be very careful. Okay, be very particular on what do you want to determine. Okay, the cost per unit or which output. Okay, or which process. Okay, because as I mentioned, the output will be very different. Okay, from each of the process. Okay, that's the only question that I can give you when it comes to process costing. Okay, the cost per unit in a process will be the cost for the process we divide by the number of units produced within that process, the output of the process, that is. Question? Any question on that? Yvonne, any question?
No.
Okay, great. I have a question here for you. What do you get with the cost here? So the idea here is that don't forget, it's not always a guarantee that the input should be equal to the output. Okay, you can have a case where there will be losses along the way. Okay, I think we shall discuss it. As time goes by, we shall be discussing that you can have here an input of, for example, material of 1,000. Okay, 1,000 here, but the output is going to be less than 1,000. It can happen because of losses along the way. Okay, because there could be spillage along the way. There could be evaporation in case the commodity does evaporate. Okay, there'll be loss along the way. So the output is not always that there'll be the input is equal to output. No. Okay, there could be either some losses that do occur along the way. Maybe, for example, the output here can be, for example, 900 units. Okay, is a possibility. But don't forget the output here. Okay, become therefore the input in this particular case here, and the same cost. Okay, how many units and the same cost that was incurred here also. So the input, the output here is the input in this particular process 2. Here. Question? Okay, so that's on process 2. That's on process accounting. Okay, as I mentioned, okay, it's not always that there'll be a case, there'll be a process that is giving 100% efficient. Okay, very unlikely that will happen. Okay, like in that account you've done, we have gone through together there. Okay, it is not always going to be the case that you have a process where the process is 100% efficient, that the input is 1,000 and we get 1,000 in output. Quite unlikely. What will happen is that we have a case of losses occurring along the way. Okay, there's often a loss in the process due to the spoilage, okay, wastage, evaporation, and so on. So input doesn't always equal to input. It doesn't always equal to output. Okay, that's the reality on the ground. Okay, so the output of one process becomes therefore the input of the next process until the finished product is made in the final process. Okay, I think we discussed this already. That the input of the output of process 1 becomes therefore the input of the next process. Okay, the same unit at the same cost. Okay, the same unit at the same cost. Okay. So output from production may be a single product, but there may also be, I'll call one or more products, or called byproducts, or called joint products. Okay, so I think I mentioned that in the case of oil refinery. Okay, that the output from production. Okay, there may be a case of only one product that can be achieved by the end of the process. You can have more than one product occurring. Okay, the case of petrol, you can have diesel, you can have tar, you can have case of gas. Okay, so the production, okay, is not always that it is a must, okay, to have one unique product. Okay, for our level, we won't discuss how to get the costs. Okay, as you advance with accounting, okay, with your cost, okay, you'll be discussing, okay, let alone how therefore do you get the cost of the byproduct, okay, how therefore do you get the cost of tar, for example, the cost of petrol, the cost of diesel, okay, from the production process, okay, but for our level, we won't do that, okay. So our main concern is to get how do we get the cost of each of the process, okay. We won't care so much regarding the cost of each of the outputs from the process, okay. As we assume is a single product to be produced by the other process, okay, to make our work a bit easier, okay. But as you go by, you have to look at those things a bit more complicated, okay, the byproducts in each of the case. Clear? Question? Abdi, any question?
Sir, I had a question on the example you just showed.
This example?
Yeah.
This one, the one on the screen?
Yeah, so where did you get the 900?
I was just saying that in reality, okay, we have a case where the amount of input you have is 1,000, okay, like in this example here, okay, isn't it? However, you can have a case here that you make losses along the way, okay, because this process is not immune from any spillages, any evaporation, okay. So you put 1,000, but you get 900, okay. So therefore, in the process, you made a loss of 100 items, okay. For example, if let me give you an example in case of a farmer. You can maybe at the point of the milking step, okay, you milk maybe 1,000 liters, okay, but along the way, there's some milk that might be spilled along the way, okay, as you do transport your product to the market, okay, it can happen. There'll be some losses incurred between or during the production process, so it can occur for sure, okay. This was just an example, okay, but just to show you that that the input is not always equal to the output, okay. In most of the time, there'll be a loss occurring along the way. Is that clear, Abri?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Vanessa, any question?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, great. So that's on process cost, a simple introduction towards process costing, okay, process costing, okay. And I want to stop there. Answer your question.